Hi, hello and welcome to this video where we will be looking at some practical harm reduction tips for cannabis. This video is suitable for parents, professionals and young people, whether or not they are using cannabis or even thinking about using cannabis. So let's begin. So first off, what do we mean by the term harm reduction? Harm reduction, as the title suggests, aims to tackle harms that are associated and arising from drug use, from a public health stance to both the individual and to wider society. Research suggests that abstinence-only approaches aren't holistic or person-centered and can exclude and alienate those who are deeply entrenched with their drug use. Harm reduction is done through focusing on the risks and the drug-related harms rather than the drug use itself. So what we mean by this is if people are going to use drugs, let's make it as safe as possible. People from all different cultures and backgrounds have been using drugs for thousands of years, and despite drugs being illegal in most countries, it doesn't look like drug use will be going away anytime soon. In fact, some people suggest the only way to stop people using drugs is if they were followed around 24/7 and every time they put a pill, potion, powder, pint or otherwise to their lips, we smacked it out of their hands. So what I'm going to do today is talk you through some great tips on reducing harms related and arising from cannabis use. So the first one that we're going to look at today is not holding the smoke in your lungs. There are many games or challenges that exist where people are encouraged to hold the smoke in their lungs for as long as possible, or hold it in for a few rotations. The reason behind this is people believe that you get higher by holding the smoke into your lungs for longer, but unfortunately, this just simply isn't true. THC and most other cannabinoids are fully absorbed in around 4 seconds after inhalation. Holding smoke in our lungs for any longer than this just increases the amounts of tar, carbon monoxide and other nasties that will be absorbed. And as well as this, we're starving our brain of oxygen, which is adding to the reason why people feel that they are higher. They're actually just lightheaded from starving their brain of oxygen. When rolling a spliff, joint, or whatever you want to call it, many people use a piece of card as a filter. This is more commonly known as a roach. People use all sorts of different things to make a roach. They might rip a bit off a takeaway menu, a bus ticket, a train ticket, or even ripping a piece off the packet of papers itself. However, the problem with this is many of these contain inks and dyes, so when you smoke your spliff, drawing the smoke through, the heat from the smoke can interact with the inks and dyes, and you're essentially inhaling a dye. Not great, not ideal, so what is recommended is using a plain or unbleached piece of thin card. These can be bought in small booklets from head shops and other outlets, but remember these must be plain. Some of them have £20 notes, smiley faces and other things printed on them, but again, these still contain inks and dyes. As well as this, you can use cigarette filter tips. There are many myths around saying that it blocks out all the THC and you don't get high, but this simply is not true. By using a cigarette filter tip, you will still feel the effects of the cannabis smoke. Cannabis can also be consumed in the form of an edible. This means that the cannabinoids are extracted from the cannabis plant and placed into a food source. The most common ones are cookies and brownies. By taking an edible, you are removing nearly all of the associated risks with smoking cannabis. However, edibles do come with their own set of risks. The first one to think about is that when you smoke a spliff, the effects hit us almost instantly. However, when we take an edible, the effects can take anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours to take effect. Therefore, it is really wise that after you've taken an edible, you wait at least 2 hours before taking any more. It's also worth noting that the high from an edible is longer lasting and some say more intense. As well as this, it's also worth remembering that once you've consumed that edible, there is nothing stopping the effects coming on. Unlike a spliff, which we can ash out or pass on to a friend if we feel like we've had enough, when we have an edible, we simply cannot do that. Even making ourselves sick won't stop the effects coming on. Finally, with edibles, it's really hard to determine the strength or the potency of the edible. In one batch of brownies, for example, 1/4 of the entire tray might have more THC in than the rest of the batch. This is particularly difficult to do if you are making them at home. It is really difficult to reduce the harms associated with picking up or meeting drug dealers. However, we do have a few good tips. One of the main and most important ones is don't lay on or get into debt or IOUs from your dealer. This puts you, in a sense, in the dealer's pocket and they may ask you to do little favours for them to repay them. This could include running drugs, selling drugs, buying drugs or any other illegal activities. If the cannabis that you have just got hold of seems dodgy in any way, it's always best not to smoke it and possibly even throw it out. It's better to lose a couple of quid than become really ill. On top of this, there have been reports of dealers spraying their cannabis with synthetic cannabinoids, also known as spice. This is usually done if the grower has had a poor crop. When going to pick up or collect cannabis, it's advisable to go with a friend or let someone know where you are going. As well, it is quite unlikely that a drug dealer is going to kidnap you for no reason, but always be wary of getting into people's cars. As well, the illicit nature of buying drugs means that you'll probably want to meet somewhere secluded and quiet, but just be aware of the risks of meeting people in places like this. The potency, or the strength of cannabis, can differ from plant to plant, from bag to bag, and unless you have an expensive lab and scientists on hand, it can be very difficult to know the potency of the cannabis you're smoking. It's recommended that you smoke a small amount and wait to feel the effects, because you can always smoke more, but you can never ever smoke less. Smoking too much weed, or weed that is too potent for you, can lead to anxiety and paranoia. Another tip is to avoid any homemade or plastic pipes and bongs. The reason from this is the heat from the lighter, the heat from the smoke, or the heat from the metal components can heat the plastic, and as well as inhaling everything else, we might also be inhaling some potentially toxic plastic fumes. A tip is to always use, if possible, glass smokeware. A whitey, or throwing a whitey, is a phrase given to when someone smokes too much weed too quickly. They can feel very high, dizzy, confused, nauseous, and the colour from their faces drain. The reason behind this is that there is a very quick and sudden drop in our blood sugars. So the quickest way to bring us back from this is to have a very sugary, fizzy drink. High sugary foods can also be used, but if you're already feeling sick, not that many people want to try and eat something. As well as this, natural fruit juices like orange and pineapple are really good because they're full of natural sugars. Or you could always mix some sugar into water. Not ideal, not as good as the other options. An option that will not work is using diet pop or sugar-free pop or zero versions. The reason behind this may seem obvious, but it's worth mentioning that these do not contain any sugar, so will not help. Another great tip is to avoid mixing cannabis with other substances. This can increase some of the negative effects that we feel, including nausea. Some substances when mixed together can be quite dangerous as well, so it's always worth doing your research if you think you might end up poly-using drugs. There are lots of myths, truths and misconceptions around using tobacco with our cannabis. Some say you should put more tobacco in your spliffs so you're smoking less cannabis, whereas some say you should remove tobacco altogether and smoke a pure cannabis spliff and just roll a smaller one. By smoking your spliff with tobacco, you might also be subconsciously developing a nicotine addiction, which means that in future you may feel like you want or need a spliff when actually it's the nicotine from the tobacco that your brain and body is craving. By smoking tobacco in your spliffs, you're also putting yourself at risk from all of the health complications that are associated with smoking tobacco. Cannabis can have a massive impact on our moods and how we are feeling, but this isn't always for the better. If we're already feeling sad, anxious, depressed or paranoid, cannabis can in fact magnify those feelings, making us feel worse. If we're not already feeling this way, cannabis can make people feel paranoid or anxious, especially if they are using cannabis that is quite potent, or if they're using it in an unfamiliar place or around people that they do not know. If you or someone you are with is smoking cannabis and they start to feel a little bit panicky, anxious or paranoid, the best thing to do is to take them somewhere quiet, sit with them and reassure them. A good idea is to let them know and remind them that the effects will wear off and tomorrow you can all have a good laugh about it. If you're in a party situation or somewhere quite busy, take them somewhere quiet, and the same again if you're in a busy city centre or a park, just take them somewhere quiet and sit with them, give them a kind of fizzy pop to help them calm down and let them know that everything will be okay. It is always worth mentioning and remembering that here in the UK, cannabis is illegal and is a Class B substance. This means that it is illegal to buy, sell, give away, win, or even use. And if you are caught with cannabis, you might get stopped by the police. If you're stopped or caught with cannabis, the police have the powers to confiscate any cannabis or any paraphernalia that you are in possession of. And by paraphernalia, I'm talking about lighters, grinders, papers, baggies, scales and anything else. As well, if you are stopped, the police can arrest you, they can issue you with a fine, and they can take you home and tell whoever's at home that you have been stopped. A great piece of advice is to always treat the police with respect, even if you are stopped or have done nothing wrong. Just remember that the police can give you a way harder time than you can give to them. For more information on stopping and searching and your rights, please check out our website because we have got loads of information on there. Cannabis should be used in a safe and familiar environment with people that you know and trust. This is something that we touched on a little bit earlier in the video, but I think it's time that we broke this down a little bit. Bit of theory for you all. There's something that's known as the harm reduction triangle, and this looks at the self, the setting and the substance. What do we mean by these three things? So the self is you, it's how you're feeling today, it's your physiological and your biological makeup, it's your tolerance, it's your height, it's your size, it's everything to do with you. The setting is where are you? Who are you with? Are you used to that place? Have you been there before? Is it noisy? Is it quiet? Is it hot? Is it cold? All these things can influence the environment around us and how we perceive the drugs that we are taking. And finally, the substance. What is it that we're taking? Are we used to it? Have we had it before? Things like that. So for example, if you've had a great day, you are in a place that you normally use drugs and you're with your best friend, you're probably going to have a better time than if you're in a terrible mood, you're not quite sure where you are, surrounded by people you don't know, and you're taking a substance that you've never tried before. This is one of the most important harm reduction tips that can apply to anywhere in life for any drug or any situation you might find yourself in. If you are at any point in a situation where you don't feel comfortable or you feel a little bit scared, do not ever be afraid to ask for help. If you are worried about a friend, never be afraid to ring a trusted adult, a parent, or in some cases even an ambulance. It's better to ring for an ambulance when you don't need one than to not ring one when you desperately need one. So who are we behind this video? We are The Corner. We are Sheffield's young people's substance misuse and harm reduction service. We work with young people aged 10 to 18 across a range of substances. We deliver harm reduction and we can also help people scale back, cut back and stop their use. We also deliver a wide range of professionals training. If you're interested, please check out our website www.thecornersheffield.com. Most of the tips and techniques that I've shared with you in this video I've picked up along the way from colleagues and other organisations. However, here are a list of references for you to further your knowledge base. I've been Brad from The Corner, part of Change Grow Live. If you've enjoyed this video, please check out our other videos, like and subscribe as well. Cheers, thanks and goodbye!